before getting into the video, I think it's important that we pay tribute to Queen Elizabeth II, who sadly passed away yesterday at the time of recording. She was just an absolutely incredible and inspirational woman, someone who devoted her entire life, right up until her final days, to serving the people of the Commonwealth and the UK. And I'm not much of a royalist myself, but I absolutely can get behind what she stands for and what she represents. So for that reason, that's why I think it's important that we mention it in the start of this video. Right, this one's going to be something a little bit different. It's a City Downy chatty one, so you know it's gonna get serious. And I think it needs to come at the beginning with a little bit of a trigger warning for some people, and I think it's important that I say right here and right now that I'm not sat here trying to call anyone out, and I'm not gonna bash anyone who can relate in this video or who is going through the things that I am going to be talking about. But a couple of weeks ago we made a video. It was just a vlog type video, just a bit of a mishmash of things that we were getting up to, and there was a small segment in there of about 30 seconds to a minute where I was talking in the back of the car about my childhood of growing up and how that has affected me as a parent. Now, I just put it in there because it was something I was thinking about at the time, and I thought it was important to just talk about because, you know, just to kind of put it out there. And I just wanted to see if other people who had gone through something similar felt the same way, not thinking I'd get much of a response, if any response. And to my surprise, I was scrolling through the comments of that video only a couple of days ago, and a good majority of that comment section was actually talking about that small clip of that whole 25-minute video. That was the key point that people kind of took from it. And it really got me thinking and kind of wondering, because my experience, I've never ever really spoken publicly to anybody about the things that I have experienced growing up, mostly through I think shame of what happened, and feeling like it was something that I shouldn't be talking about. For anyone who doesn't understand what I'm talking about, in that clip I mentioned that one of my parents, my mum, was, or still is, an alcoholic, and it's really put life into perspective for me as a parent, and how I wouldn't treat Apollo in the same way that I was treated growing up. And a lot of people, you know, left comments about their upbringings and how they felt very similarly to their childhood experiences, and how they really didn't want to allow that to bleed into their parenting and let their children experience the same things. So I feel like it really opened the floodgates, and I feel like it's something that I can talk about. Also, just seeing how people responded to Lainey's kind of PTSD talks, where people have felt like this is a safe place that they can come to talk about their feelings, and the comments and the messages that we've received off the back of that, people reaching out and saying, this is my experiences, or, you know, things like this. And I think people like that wanted a place or people that they could talk to, much like we wanted people that we could talk to about our experiences. And based off of that, I felt like I should make this video talking about my upbringing, what happened specifically, and make this a safe place where, you know, you can comment on this video and it be a safe place for you to talk about things if you want to, or, you know, messaging us privately. So it's going to get deep, I'm going to warn you now. If that's not your thing, then I think this would be a very good time to click off. But yeah, I've waffled on for a very long time and I haven't even got into it yet. But also, before I begin this isn't, I've mentioned it before, but this isn't me calling out my mum, you know, or anybody who suffers with addiction or alcoholism or anything like that. You know, that's absolutely not the case. This video is solely intended to offer a platform or offer a place for people, like-minded people like myself, who feel the same way. Because I think when it comes to addiction and when it comes to alcoholics and things like this, a lot of focus is put on the person specifically who is the addict or is the alcoholic, you know, and I think a lot of the damage is put onto the people that are closest to them. Again, this video is from my experience. People will disagree or may disagree with what I say, or they may see things differently, and that's absolutely fine. You know, we're all entitled to our own opinions on this. But I think this is my experience, this is my opinions on it. So if you disagree, that's perfectly fine. Please let me know down below why you disagree, and, you know, maybe we can bounce off of each other with it. But I think there's a lot of focus on those people in particular, but not the families or the people closest to those people who are also affected, if that makes sense. So for me and my family were never the focus of the damage or the fallout that would have been ensued by my mum. She was always the focus. People wanted to get her better, and they weren't worried about the people that she hurt along the way, if that makes sense. And so my mum, just a bit of backstory on her. She is an alcoholic. She has been for as long as I know, and there is an element of substance abuse as well, with prescribed medications and things like this, and that's all I've really ever known my mum, really. Like, there was no time before where I knew her before she was an alcoholic. That's just always who she was to me, and growing up, I never knew that there was a problem with that. I was in this bubble of, that's just who my mum is, you know. Like, I always thought that other people's parents, like friends' parents, were similar in whatever way they were. They could have been, I didn't think everyone had, I thought everyone had the same parents, you know. Like, my mum was this person, she liked to drink alcohol and she liked to, like, take pills. And I thought everyone's parents were like that. It wasn't until I was a little bit older, I matured a little bit, and I started to realise that what was going on wasn't necessarily the same as what other people had going on. And I found that out through going to friends' houses and seeing that their parents acted completely different to how my parents would, in the sense that they would be really present and they'd be really, like, endearing to the children or to my friends, or they would be very open to them, and, you know, they'd be interested about their day. Whereas with my mum and my parents, it was a bit more, you know, it wouldn't be uncommon for me to come home from school for as long as I can remember and find my mum passed out on the sofa, or, you know, coming in and just finding her in bed, and that's kind of where she'd spend the rest of the day. And that was just how it was. There was no one there to greet me from school and ask how my day was and see if I had homework to do, or to see if I was okay, if I was having any troubles, or it was very much I was left to my own devices. And again, until I went to friends' houses and saw that wasn't the same dynamic for them, I thought that was normal. I thought that was just how parents were. And when I realised that my mum had different issues, you know, I examined things a bit more and I looked a bit more into things, and I would see problems, especially when she was drinking. She'd get very aggressive, very violent, very easily agitated towards neighbours, other people, and she all round wasn't a very nice person. I mean, she never hurt me in any way physically. she was just very aggressive towards people, and she could be very hostile towards me as well at times. So I grew up with quite a tough skin. Like, you know, like she would always, there'd always be back and forth between us, and I found myself in a position where I felt like I had to be the person, even from the age of 6 or 7, for as long that I can just remember those times vividly. Like before that I don't know, but definitely from that age onwards, I'd find myself being the person, along with my dad, who would pick up the pieces essentially. So we would have to mediate like heated discussions, and knowing if I knew that came home and I knew my mum was drunk, or if she had taken something, that I was going to have to be on high alert for the rest of that day, to just in case she felt that for whatever reason that she could go and talk to someone, because it would never end well. And I think that put a lot of pressure on me. Like looking back on it now, I didn't feel it at the time, but I realise from such a young age of 6, for as early as I can remember, 6, like that was my role in life. I was there to damage control, and I was there to pick up pieces, and I was there to help support and be a parent to my brother and sister, who are younger than me. So my brother is 17 now, so he's 6 years younger than me, and my sister's 15, so she is 8 years younger than me. So when they came onto the scene, I found myself parenting them, even though I was only 6 and 8 when they were born, and then, you know, raising them. And I also found myself in a position where I was trying to shield them from seeing what I would see, which was an aggressive mum, who was very hostile at home, aggressive when we were out, hot-headed, hot-tempered, and literally could switch like that, you know, like 0 to 100. And I found myself in that position of in between her and them, because I really didn't want them to see that. And also I found myself, like, my mum would often come into school, you know, stinking of booze, like thinking back on it, like slurring words, stumbling about. So the school, like, I didn't know then, but I know now that the school would have 100% been aware of the situation at home. But whenever teachers would ask me about situations at home, I remember teachers, head teachers, school counsellors, things like this coming to talk to me, and it was just a brick wall. Like, I'd give nothing, right? Either that, or I'd be like, no, everything's fine. They'd be like, how are things at home? And I'd be like, nope, everything's fine. And that is as much as they would like. It was like trying to get blood from a stone. And looking back on it, the reason I did that was because I didn't want my family to be split up. In my mind, it was, if the school knew that things were going wrong at home, they'd get things like social services involved, there would be interventions, and my family would have, my mum, dad, brother and sister and myself we would have been broken up. Like, my brother and sister would have been taken into care, and myself and my mum and dad would have been left to it, and there would have been issues there. And I think that was hard, because I desperately wanted to talk to these people. I wanted nothing more than to say to these people, no, things aren't okay. Things are massively not okay. Like, we've got big issues, you know, and I knew, in myself, I felt like I couldn't do that. And it was really disappointing, because I'd feel like deep in me that I wanted to say to these people that there's a problem and reach out and be like, I need help, but it was my head and my heart, and I never did it. There was a constant worry as well, so fortunately I struggle to remember things before the age of about 10 years old. I can't remember much. Like, I remember the bad things that happened and the negative side of life, but, you know, things like birthdays, things like events, like I struggle to remember those, and there is a reason for that. I think that I have been told recently, which I'll get onto a little bit later on. But I struggle to remember things before the age of 10. From the age of about 10 words on, I can kind of remember bits and pieces, and then in my adult life I remember quite a lot. And there was a constant worry of relapse, because she found AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, for anyone that doesn't know, and she started going there, and you know, we saw huge improvements at home. I did anyway, and in my mum, she became a nicer person. She became more warming and welcoming, and when that first came about, it was weird. It was strange because that wasn't the person that I knew. I can't remember what age I was when she'd found AA, but she'd become a different person, and there was a community of people around her, of like-minded people who had been through similar things, and she was a better person. And after a while, this went on for a few months, she got much better, like, you know, and I had opened up a lot more to this new person. And then there was a relapse, from what I remember, and she went straight back to the person that she was initially, and that just completely like ruined, like, it was like my tiny little world that had like been built up over the past few months. It come crumbling down, and we were back to square one. And from that point, I've kind of had a few trust issues here and there, because I was always from that point on guard of, if she started getting better, it was like, okay, how long is this gonna last? How long is it gonna last though? And then, you know, I would always be found right in the end, because it would go on for a few months, maybe a year, maybe a year and a half, and then there would be a relapse, and it'd be like, right, we're back here again. Thank God I didn't open up again, because, you know, this one would have hurt a lot, you know. And the relapses always hit hard. I mean, I'm sure there were multiple reasons as to why there were relapses, you know, events in life and all sorts, but they always hit hard, and they were always really bad. Like, things would go really wrong. And a lot of things that I've wondered since thinking back on this is, you know, where were the people that I could have depended on? You know, grandparents, my dad, other people within the immediate family who could have been there to help potentially. And I think my dad, although he was brilliant, swept a lot of things under the carpet. My mum would go on a tearing rampage, and he would always be there to sweep up the mess, tidy up after her, and like that was his job. And you know, he had to go to work, he had to provide for the family. So he was kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, I believe. And grandparents were quite ostracised from the family, because my mum was quite vile, quite a vile person when she was drunk. She wasn't nice at all, and a lot of people were on the receiving end of that. And unfortunately, my grandparents, aunties, uncles were all a part of that, to the point where they had to step away from her because it got that bad. So I was always on my own, basically. I had my dad, but he always had his own shit going on, you know, work and trying to pick up the pieces, so I never felt like I could talk to him about it. So I was always on my own. My brother and sister never knew any different. They never even knew that this was going on. So there I felt like I was doing a good job. And it was hard, because we never knew family. We still don't. Like, there's a lot of, I have aunties and uncles, cousins and relatives that I've never met, and I probably will never meet, because of things that have gone on in the past. Like, I know of them, I know they exist, but I've never met them, never spoken to them, or anything like that. And whether they know what happened or what went on and why we don't know them, I don't know. That's not for me to know, but that is what it is. So that was my life growing up. It was just trying to pick up the pieces and damage control and make sure that everyone else was okay. And there's a reason why I've never spoken on this. A lot of people have asked in the past, like, you know, what was your childhood like? And I've never commented on it. And I think that's led a lot of people to think that I had, like, just your standard upbringing, you know, just your bog standard life. I say standard, like everyone's standard is different, but you know what I mean by that is, like, I had a good upbringing with a loving family, and it was all rainbows and sunshine, and it was just happy. But I never spoke about this because I felt an element of shame towards what I was experiencing. I felt an element of disappointment, and I say shame. I use the word shame because what I mean by that is I was ashamed of who my family were, and I felt ashamed of the way that I was brought up, and I feel to some degrees that I brought myself up, and I don't want people to have that opinion of my family. I don't want to villainize my mum. I don't want to portray her in a way where it's negative, because when she's sober, she's a lovely person, and she has other people's interests at heart. But when she's not, which she wasn't my entire upbringing near enough, it was rough, and it's led to so many, you know, family issues, not just like I've mentioned about my grandparents and aunties and uncles, but in the immediate family. By immediate family I mean me, brother, sister, dad, mum, and to the point where, like, for 2 years me and Lainey completely stepped away from everyone, and we didn't speak to them at all. That was just off the back of my mum had gone 7.5 years sober, which was absolutely incredible. And naively, I thought that she'd cracked it. I thought, she's gone 7.5 years sober. Like, like in that time there was testing things that we thought, oh, this could be it, but it never happened. And we thought, she's cracked it. She's done it. Like, that is it. That was an incredibly naive thing to think, because that's not how addiction works, and we learnt that the hard way, because there were a few events that had built up to this point where things were starting to go a little bit wrong. I don't really want to go into it, but it all came to a head when my mum took a drink. And when I say took a drink, like, this woman drinks like a fish. Like, I remember getting a phone call from my sister, absolutely, I will never forget the phone call. She was in an utter state of despair, and because this was the first time that, like, because I'd always sheltered her from this, and my dad had done his best to shelter them from this. This was the first time they'd ever seen that side of my mum, and this was 2 years ago. 2 years ago, and so my sister was 13, my brother was 15, and this was the first time they'd ever experienced in their entire lives this side of my mum that I knew incredibly well, that my dad knew incredibly well, but they never knew this, ever. And she'd taken a drink. I remember going over there, like rushing over there, and just on the side of the house there was, oh my god, it was unreal. There was, like, bottles of, like, easily 3 bottles of wine, like 4 bottles of spirits, cans of I don't know what. She'd just drunk the cupboards dry, right? And she was in a really bad way, and she'd essentially, by the time I'd got there, the police were already there, because there was a huge issue with my mum going against my dad, and things escalated very quickly to the point where my mum had gone for my dad and the police was phoned. At that point, it really hurt. It really hurt, because she had gone 7.5 years sober. I thought she'd cracked it. Everyone else had thought she'd cracked it. And then, boom, this happened, and it was an explosion of shit. Shit was everywhere, and you know, that like literally broke me. It broke my brother and my sister, because they'd never seen that before. My brother's never been right since. That was hard to take as well, because I had spent my entire life trying to protect these two children, these two innocent children, from that, and it feels like that just got completely undone. And I was taken back to a place where I didn't want to ever be again, where I was having to be the mediator and controlling situations and sweeping up and protecting other people, and it was horrible. It was really horrible. And off the back of that, I decided that I didn't want to, I had to step away from myself. I had to say to her, I was like, look, I can't do this with you anymore. Like, there was other things going on as well that contributed. This wasn't the only reason why why we decided to step away, but this was one of the main reasons. Anyway, time moves on. 2 years later, you know, there was another incident about a year ago that again got really, really bad. And even though I wanted to stay stepped away from the family, I got dragged into it. And it led to me having a lot, not issues at work, but, you know, I was working with children, and I've got I think I've got a paternal side to me that, like, when I'm at work, you know, I want to have fun with the kids. I want to, you know, your main priority as a teacher is to make sure those kids are enjoying your lesson, they are learning, and they are safe, okay? And those were the principles of your lessons and stuff. And, you know, I had gone into work, and my bosses realised that I wasn't okay, and, you know, it led to me talking to my boss for the first time ever. I'd never spoken to anyone about this. Like, you know, Lainey was aware of a few things. Obviously, she had then learned the other side of my mum. But this was the first time I'd ever spoken to anybody about it properly that wasn't involved in the situation, if that makes sense. And, you know, he was absolutely amazing. Like, I will forever be grateful to my boss for what he did for me that day. Like, he was a shoulder to cry on when I had no one else. And, you know, that was, you know, he will never understand how much that meant to me and what he did for me that day. You know, off the back of it, he helped me to get some counselling and therapy, and that was probably the biggest game changer of my life, because I was able to talk to someone who knew what they were talking about situations and about what had happened, and everything that I've explained to you. There was a lot of other things that I'd witnessed growing up that my mum had done that I didn't understand, and you know, this woman, this therapist, was absolutely incredible. She was able to help me through it, and she explained to me, you know, like, she believes that I can't remember things before the age of 10 because it's a defense mechanism from your brain, where your brain literally, if there's something that's traumatic, it just, your brain puts a block on it and it kind of blurs it out. That's how she described it to me. And it's like your brain is erasing those negative feelings because it's damaging to your brain. So she basically put it that way, and I was like, that makes utter sense. And she was incredible, and that was about a year ago, actually. That was about 2 years ago. Was it 2 years ago? A year ago? One of the two. The reason I mentioned it in that video was because when Lainey gave birth to Apollo, I had about 2 or 3 weeks where I literally looked at this baby, who was mine, and I had so much love and emotion towards this baby, and it made me think I could never put this baby in any harm, ever. Like, I would do my absolute, I would like literally do anything to stop this baby from coming to any harm. But someone who was that figure for me, wasn't able to do that, and not only were they not able to do that, they were the cause of my pain, and they were the cause of my suffering at times. And it really, I to this day still can't get my head around it. And so that's why I put it in the video. And the response that we got was absolutely unreal from people who felt the same, who had been through similar. Now, I grew up believing that I was the only person who had ever experienced this. Naively, of course, like, you know, I now understand that I'm not the only person who's ever gone through a hard time growing up or whatever, you know, like, there are other people who have been through similar or different, but with similar emotions, different circumstances, you know, things like this. And that was comforting to me, to know that I wasn't on my own with that, and that there were other people who knew that there were things happening, or there were other people who had been through something similar or had been through hardships, and they felt the same way towards their children. And that, it was a bit of a wake-up call for me. And, you know, if you ever go back to look at that video, like, even if you don't watch the video, you know, flick through the comments, because the comments in there are absolutely incredible, full of incredible people who have gone through some unfortunate circumstances and, you know, have worn their hearts on their sleeves and have come through the other side and have just become incredible humans. And you might be watching this video now, and I am talking to you, you incredible humans. I want to put it out there because I feel like this is almost therapy for me, but I was just curious to know if anyone else felt the same way, because I feel like I have to protect this child at all costs from any dangers. And when Apollo was born, there was an agreement that my mum, who was at this point, she's now been sober for 8 months, I think, or 7 months, which is absolutely incredible. Actually, it could be 9 months, one of those, but she's been sober for a long time. But I've said to her, and I never want to weaponise my child, and I never will, because that's wrong. But I have said to my mum, who has now met him and is the grandmother to my child, that if anything goes wrong, and if she was to pick up another drink or whatever, or anything was to go bad, then there would be no contact. Just because, and that might seem to some people extreme. Some people might be hearing that and be thinking, ooh, that's a bit harsh. But, you know, you don't know her. You don't know her like I do, and I feel like that comes from a place of care, and I feel like that's what's best for my son. But I still feel like there's an element of high alert there. I feel like there has to be. I feel like I'm constantly on edge, just sitting and waiting for a relapse. And that sounds horrible in itself, because I want to have every faith in my mum that she can not relapse, and that won't be the case. But I think I'd be incredibly naive to sit here and say to you that I don't think she would, because no one knows. I don't know if she'll relapse again. She doesn't know if she'll relapse again. Nobody knows if she'll relapse again. I'm hoping that she won't. I'm praying that she won't. You know, I always had quite that British stiff upper lip when it came to this kind of subject. It was always like, well, you know, just put on a brave face and it's all okay. You know, like, that was always my mindset growing up, and it was always my mindset as an adult that, you know, it's okay. It's okay. I've lived through it. I'm still here. It must be okay. But the long-lasting effects are still there. Again, like I said at the start of the video, this isn't me trying to bash anyone who is an alcoholic, anyone who is has an addiction to something. And I think what I've learned is that there are people out there who offer support to the people of the families of people who are addicts or things like this. And there are lots of charities, and I'm going to be linking down below charities who work closely with families of Alcoholics and Addicts, and you know, Alcoholics Anonymous, I will be linking them down below as well, and other links to other support services and charities who can provide help, because for all I've been through it and I've come out on the other end, there might still be someone watching this video now who hasn't finished going through that, or is still living there like that. And these aren't just services for the children, this is for everyone who is directly involved or is directly affected by someone who has an addiction or who is an alcoholic. And the help is there for you. I didn't know it was there for me, but it is there for you. And that's something that I wish I knew. I wish I knew that. And don't think like I did. Don't think that it's going to be the end of your family. Don't think it's going to be the end, because I've working in schools, I understand how Childline works, I understand how social services works. The last thing they want to do is break up your family. That's the last resort. They will have 10 things to implement before they would. That has to be such a drastic case for them to do that. Don't think like I did. And the help is there for you. And for the people who are watching this who have suffered from addiction, I know Erica Peterson, who is someone who's become a friend of ours. I'm fucking proud of you. I'm so proud of you, because you often talk about how you suffered from addiction, and you talk about your sobriety, and you wear that with pride, and you absolutely should, because you are a strong person for coming through on the other end of that and becoming the person that you are today. And to anyone who has been an addict, still is an addict, who whatever, you're incredible people, all right? Like, there is no taking that away from you, because you deserve all the praise and all the credit for maybe beating your addiction. Or I don't think there is any beating it, if I'm honest. It's something, if there's something that I've learned from my mum and watching her, it's that you don't beat it, you learn to manage it. I think that's kind of how I see it. Maybe I'm wrong, you know, that's just from what I've experienced, and it is an illness. That's how it's been put across to me. But, you know, if you are one of those people who has beaten it, amazing, you're incredible. If you're still going through it and you're dipping in and out, you know, you're still incredible. You're still incredible. This video was made from my point of view, which is from the person watching the person with the addiction, not from the point of view of an addict. So it could be very easy for me to sit here and say these things, but I could be completely off the mark, and that's fine. If I am off the mark, you need to tell me. But I know it's not easy. I know that. I've seen it firsthand. I know that it's easier said than done. But there is help for you. There is help for you, and I will be linking it down below, like I said. So please, even if you're concerned for someone, you know, these charities are here to support the families of those people and the people directly. So, you know, that can't be. I wish I knew about that growing up. But I think that's where I'm going to leave it off. Damn, that got heavy, didn't it? I didn't expect it to go that heavy, and I know I went off on a few tangents, but you know, I think this was an important video to make, because it's something that's been weighing on my mind a lot recently, and I was humming and ahhing whether I made this video, and there was a point where I wasn't going to, then I was, because I felt so strongly about what I feel, but then I didn't want to, because I didn't want to feel like I was bad-mouthing anybody or disrespecting anybody. But I feel like I wish I had, this was the perspective I put it in just before making this video, was I wish I had someone to make a video about this, to tell me that they had experienced something similar, and to tell me that it's going to be okay. I needed that, and I never had it. So, you know, for the people who do need to hear that, it is going to be okay. It's not going to be easy. It never is. But it will be okay, you know. And in the comments, it will be a safe place for you to talk if you feel like you want to. And our DMs are always open: Facebook, Instagram, email, anything. You know, the links for all of those are down below as well. So if you want to get in touch and you want to talk, they're always open. We are there for you. Don't even know how to end it. I think I'm just gonna leave it at that. Sorry I got a bit heavy, but I think it was important for me to talk about this. But yeah, we'll see you in the next video.